DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is, go get an energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is, we are on part 3 of our ongoing mini-series, which is the case for homeschooling. Before we get started, I remind you of a couple things. First of all, my text message number down below in the description. Secondly, work on your game, workonmygame.com. That's where you can get on my email list and get my emails every single day. I call it the Daily Game. And third, Work on Your Game University. Have me as your direct coach, get access to all of our courses and programs. We got over 100 programs in there, a bunch of different trainings on different subjects, and most importantly, you get access to me as your direct coach. That's all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Link down below in the description. Picking up where we left off, which is point number 7 of our ongoing series here, which is the case for homeschooling. If you haven't heard my introductory points in the first episode of the series, and then continuing yesterday, now we're picking up here. Make sure you catch those 2 previous episodes. If you're just picking us up in the middle here, it will give you much more context to understand what we're talking about, what we have already discussed. As we pick up on point number 7, again, the topic is the case for homeschooling. Number 7 is you get a more flexible schedule. Most people sleep, let's just say 8 hours a night of sleep. Not everybody gets that, but let's say 8 hours. Then usually it's 8 hours for work or school, and then 8 hours of what we call discretionary time. Well, here's the great thing about homeschooling is that you now have much more flexibility when it comes to the discretionary time that you get with your kids. Studies show that you have spent about, somewhere between 80 and 90% of the time you will ever spend with your children by the time they move out of your house when they go to college. By the time they get age 18 or either going to college or just moving out, period, let's say 90% of the time you're ever going to spend with your kids has been spent already. So if you are giving 8 hours a day for them to go to school, but now you take those 8 hours back because now you're homeschooling, now you have much more time to spend with your kids before they go away, and that time, that 90% of the time is already taken. At least you can get more of the 90% in during the time that you have to do it. So you can fit the schooling around your family's lifestyle and your family's priorities rather than fitting your lifestyle and priorities around the fact that your kids have to go to school. So you can't do something with your kid at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday if they're supposed to be in school or they have to be in school. But if you're homeschooling, now you have control over it. Now you can go do something in the middle of the day with your kid because they're right there at home with you. I know of parents, these are people I know personally, who travel the world. Every time I talk to them, they're living in a different place, and they may not even have a permanent address because they're always moving around, and they do this with their kids. They homeschool their kids. Their kids can fit school around a lifestyle rather than fitting a lifestyle around school. Again, this is the way that you live when you have control over your time. And I want all of you to understand, most of you hear people talking about the wealthy and rich, and you hear people talking about this. Some of you may be part of the wealthy or the rich. What makes you wealthy and rich, folks, is not just the fact that you have a certain amount of money. That's the way most people equate it. What really makes you wealthy and rich is that you have control over your time. You can do what the hell you want to do. And see, when you have a certain amount of money, you do what you want to do. And when you need money, you do what you have to do. And homeschooling is a rich way of living. Why? Because you are taking back control of your time. And many of you need to come to this understanding and understand that making the decision to take back control of your time often precedes having more control over your money. This is an important thing, especially for those of you who are entrepreneurs. If you're an entrepreneur, you're thinking about, hey, I want to make more money. But the first thing you got to do is get control over your time. That starts with the way of thinking. It starts by doing things like stop doing everything on your own and start using the money that you do have to hire and outsource work so that you're only doing the things that are the highest ROI activities that are best suited to your skill set, and then outsourcing everything else, using your money to do what? Effectively, you are buying time. And once you start buying your time back, now you are starting to operate in a rich way, and that puts you in position to actually become tangibly and financially rich, and i.e. having more money because of the way that you're using your time. Let's keep in mind, everybody, time is more valuable than money. And if you want to have a rich relationship with your family and your children, the most important thing you need to do is maximize and prioritize the amount of time you are getting with them. If you're sending them to school for 8 hours a day and then you change that 8 hours to 0 hours a day, and you're doing the homeschooling somehow, some way, and let's say it only takes 2 or 3 hours a day, now you just bought yourself at least 5 or 6 hours. And if you're doing the homeschooling yourself, then you got the whole 8. Now you are much more rich in your relationship with your kids because you have a lot more time with them. Everybody understand this? So having this more flexible schedule allows you to be much more rich in the way you do things. And again, as I said, I know parents who travel the world. They're all over the place with their kids. They're at the mall at 12 o'clock on a Tuesday because their kids don't have to be in school. And their kids are still getting the education. They're just getting it in a different way. It's an alternative way of doing things. Now, personally, and this, I would think most of you, this would apply to as well. I don't see myself ever living in such a way where I'm backpacking and every time you talk to me, I'm in a different country, and that's not my style. I don't want to live that way. I actually like being in the same place on a consistent basis anyway. I like going to the same gyms all the time, and I go outside and I run the same paths. I like that. I like that consistency and that stability. But however, the whole point is when you're homeschooling, you have the option of living however you want to live. That's the point, as I just told you. When you're rich, you do what you want to do. When you need money, you do what you got to do. And I want you to understand that money is a byproduct of how you use your time. It's not you get a whole bunch of money, then you have time. No, it's you get control over your time, and that will put you in position to get whatever kind of money you want or whatever kind of money you need. You see, being rich is not necessarily about how much money you have. Rich does not mean $1 million. Rich means how long can you sustain the lifestyle that you're living, given the way that your money is coming in without you having to go work for it. So that can be a different level for different people. Some people need $10,000 a month to sustain their lifestyle. Some people need $1,000 a month to sustain their lifestyle. Both of them can be rich. If the person with a $10,000 lifestyle is making $15,000 a month without having to work for it, they're rich, or at least as long as they keep that money coming in. And if the person who has a $1,000 lifestyle is bringing in $5,000 a month, they're rich as well. They're both rich. They're equally rich. Why? Because both of them can maintain their lifestyles and they don't have to go work for the money. Their lifestyles is the key term here because they each have different costs of lifestyle. So based on how you want to live, the most important thing you got to get control over is not the money here. It's not a money conversation. It's a time conversation. And your kids are your greatest creation. So how much time are you spending with them? Again, back to the question I asked you an episode or two ago. Who is raising your kids? Is it you or is it somebody else? When you're homeschooling, the answer definitely becomes you. So you don't want school dictating, or you will no longer have, when you're homeschooling, you no longer have school dictating where you live, how you live, your lifestyle, your schedule, your location, or anything else. You do what you want to do. Isn't that how life's supposed to be anyway? Isn't life supposed to be you doing what you want to do? Okay, but look at it. If you really look at it, many of you, if you take the 10,000-foot view and look at your life, you're not really doing what you want to do. You're doing what you have to do as mandated by somebody who's not you. You're not controlling your own life. What can you do to change this situation? That's a good question. Moving on to point number 8, while you think about it. Today's topic, once again, is we're on our 4-part mini-series. This is part number 3. The topic is the case for homeschooling. Number 8, customize and one-on-one attention. This is what happens when you're homeschooling. You can customize the attention that you give to your student, being your child, and you can give one-on-one attention to them. These are things that you definitely cannot always get in school. When I was in school, there were 2 types of students who really got customized and one-on-one attention. Actually, it was really 1 type of student. We'll say 1.5. When I was in school, I was a pretty good student. Let's just say in elementary school, I was a pretty good student. And then in middle school, I was like a above average, but I wasn't the top student. I was maybe in the top 20 percentile. Whereas in elementary school, I was probably in the top 10 or 5 or 10 percentile of students in terms of performance. It's not that I got dumber when I got to middle school. It's just that I stopped trying as hard because I was interested in other things. When I was in school, I noticed that there were basically, again, 1.5 types of students who got attention. There's either students who are really bad at doing the work, and we would often think that these kids are dumb or retarded or they're just not smart because they didn't do well in school. But I've come to evolve on that, understanding that standardized education is presuming that people are standard and people are not standard. And someone who's not standard will not do well in the standard system. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It means there's something wrong with the system. But they would get a lot of attention because they weren't doing as well. And the teacher would sometimes have to slow down for 90% of the class so they can get the 10% to keep up. Because the teacher can only have but so many kids not passing from one grade to the next, because that would make the teacher look bad. Now the teacher might lose their job. You see, this is the whole system. This is where social promotion comes from, that the teachers are kind of trying to keep their jobs, the principal's trying to keep their job, the school board's trying to keep schools open so they can keep people employed. So they might move a kid up who doesn't really need to be moved up because the kid hasn't really learned, But again, if they leave too many kids back, then the school starts getting looked at. And now jobs start getting threatened. So you see how the system is all screwed up, and screwed up in more way than one. I'm just bringing up one here. It's not even the main point. So the kids who weren't doing well academically and they weren't keeping up with the rest of the class, they would get some specialized attention because the teacher, again, as I just explained, can't have too many kids not learning the material, quote unquote learning. And the other type of kid who would get attention, these are actually kind of in the same group, are the kids who are behavioral problems. Behavioral problem kids get attention because they disrupt class. They block the rest of the class from learning the way they want to be learning, and they disrupt the students. They disrupt the teacher, and they get attention just because they're trying to get attention. They do bad stuff to draw attention. And the other type of student, the half of student that I was going to mention to get some attention, is a student who's exceptional, like a really, really good student who's getting straight A's and everything. And sometimes they'll get some extra attention from the teacher just because they're so good. But for the most part, the straight A student gets ignored because the teacher can afford to ignore them because they know that straight A student is going to do well even if the teacher gives them no attention whatsoever. Why? Usually because this kid has usually has a very stable situation at home, and they already come prepared to be a high performer whether the teacher is good or not. So they don't really get any extra attention because they don't need it. The extra attention goes to the people who quote unquote need it, like the students who are underperforming and the students who are misbehaving. Now, again, in real life, that's not the way it works. In real life, the extra attention goes to the highest performers. In a meritocracy, extra attention goes to the highest performers. Real life is not always a meritocracy. So I got to make sure I check that one. In a meritocracy, the highest performers get the attention. Now, in other environments, high performers get ignored, just like in school. And any of you who was a high performer in school, tell me, did the teacher give you extra attention? For the most part, not really. You got treated just like everybody else, maybe even treated less and got less attention than everybody else because you were so good. Teacher didn't need to give you any attention. You were good. Teacher got to pay attention to the ones who are losing and at falling behind because, again, the teacher looks bad if too many kids are falling behind. It might be the teacher's something wrong with the teacher, when it's usually not even the case. When you are homeschooling, again, you have the option of doing what you want to do rather than doing what you're told to do. And when we're talking about this customized one-on-one attention here in point number 8, a kid probably doesn't get a lot of this in a public school because there may be so many other kids in the classroom that teachers just simply can't do it. A very seasoned teacher is able to kind of mix paying attention to the whole class and giving customized attention to certain students. A seasoned teacher is good at doing this, but not all teachers are seasoned. I've seen some really, really bad teachers with jobs, full-time jobs. If your child is struggling in a particular subject, let's say they're in a classroom with 30 kids, from what I've heard from educators, and I know many of them, the children who are challenged in a particular subject often need some one-on-one help and some one-on-one attention. But that one-on-one help and attention comes at a cost. Either the parent has to pay out of pocket to hire a tutor to help your kid out so your kid can keep up, or you got to hope that the teacher can carve out some one-on-one time to help your kid out, but they often can't do that because they got 30 other kids that they are supposed to be paying attention to besides just your kid, and they got to keep up. They can't slow down the whole lesson just because one kid is lagging behind. So this becomes a conundrum. It becomes a no perfect solution problem. So this is why the tutoring industry exists, because there are kids who simply are not able to keep up, and they can get a tutor and a really good teacher who can help your kid catch up, maybe even excel. My mother worked when I was a child. Sometimes she would have other kids who were around our age get brought to her by parents, and she would tutor those kids and help them with reading or math, or usually reading or math, that they weren't doing too well with, and then she would tutor them, and then they'd be doing amazing. Now, did my mom just make these kids smart? No, my mom just knew the system. She knew the educational system really well, and she knew how to explain it to people so that they could understand it and how to thrive in it. She wouldn't say it in those words, but she would teach a kid, some 8-year-old, math in a way that they really understood it, and then they go get 100 on their next test when they were failing the class 3 weeks ago, because she knew how to teach to the system. She was very good at it. That's one of the reasons why, again, I did pretty well in the system, even though I stopped trying after elementary school. And the reason why my sister, who tried the whole time, became an amazing academic performer. We had good training at home. The best performing students, again, usually they get pushed into some extra enrichment, like programs and stuff like that are outside of the classroom, outside of the basics that they get in school, because they've shown a propensity to be really good students. And parents who are serious about their children, wanting their kids to be highly educated, usually will do one of two things. They will either financially invest in making sure their kids get the extra training and learning and enrichment. You see this a lot with parents who will invest in getting their kids extra prep for standardized testing or extra coaching on certain things so they can get into a really good college. You'll see parents financially invest. And if the parent does not have the resources to financially invest, and the parents will invest what we call elbow grease. They'll invest sweat equity to make sure they're giving their kids as many options as they can, even though they don't have the finances to buy their way into those situations. There's a reason why certain cultures tend to perform really well academically as opposed to others that do not perform well academically. In the United States of America, in my experience, the Asian students, and there will be like 3 of them in our whole class, they will outperform all the other kids, the black kids and the white kids put together, these 3 Asian kids. Now, why is this? Is this random? No, it's not random, because in their culture, it is demanded of them. It is a mandate. It's not a suggestion. It is a mandate that you're going to be a high performing student. And lo and behold, they're all high performing students. Not all of them. I had some Asian classmates who were average students as well, but the people who were at the top of the class were often from outside of our culture. They were often from outside of our culture. They might have looked like us in a way, but their culture was not the same as ours. And they performed as if, again, there was a mandate for them to perform. It was hoped that we perform. It was demanded that they perform. That's 2 different things. Do you understand? There is a reason why certain cultures perform so well academically as opposed to others. In other environments, you get penalized for performing well. You get ridiculed and laughed at for being a good student. In the black community, that happened a lot back in the day. If you were a really good student, you were looked at as a nerd and something was wrong with you because you're trying too hard in school. In the Asian community, do you think that happens? I don't think so. I'm not Asian, but I don't think so. It's not a stereotype, it's reality. So when you are homeschooling, your child can be getting that personalized attention from the very beginning that usually turns into higher level academic performance. Again, do you think that would produce a different outcome? I think it would. Again, look around the results of the people you were around when you were in school. And if you do remember, you could ask yourself, okay, what is this person doing? Or what does this person have access to that I'm not doing or that I don't have access to? There's no way this person is just that much smarter than me. The highest performing students when you were in school were not smarter than you. They just had a different system and structure for preparing than what you had. And that's the reason why their results were different than yours. Now, could they have been smarter? Possibly, but that's not the reason for the difference. The reason is not because they're smart and you're dumb. The reason is because they have a system and a structure for performance and you didn't. That's why. Moving on, point number 9. Today's topic, once again, is the case for homeschooling. Number 9, you have a safer learning environment. I told you that in school, there are 2 types of kids that get most of the attention. The kids who are too slow to pick up on concepts. In other words, they're on their way to failing the class and the teacher doesn't want that. And B are the misbehaving students who do things to draw attention because they ain't got nothing better to do. A safer learning environment means that your kid will be able to learn in an environment in which they don't have to deal with the troublemakers in class and don't have to deal with the slow kids who can't keep up. And if there are slow kids who can't keep up, the homeschool teacher can give your kid enough stuff to keep them challenged while it's also giving the personalized attention to the slow kid who's not quite keeping up at the same time. This creates a safer learning environment for everybody. Now, again, I'm not the type of person who prioritizes safety in all possible ways. I am not a fan of the concept of safe spaces. Safe spaces, I believe, are for pussies and people who have no balls. And I'm talking men and women. There are no such thing as safe spaces in real life. I talked about this in episode number 2764 and 2765. There's no such thing as a safe space. And I tell you how to create your own safe space. At the same time, I do want my child to be in a safe learning environment, meaning an environment where they feel safe to admit that they don't understand something, where they are okay being challenged, where they can raise their hand and get personalized help, and they feel okay doing it. In school, when I was in school and there are 30 kids in the classroom and everybody seems to have gotten the point and you're the one who didn't get the point, some kids would be reluctant to raise their hand and say they didn't get the point because you're the only one. And some kids socially would feel awkward being the one to point out that they didn't understand something when it appears everybody else does pick it up. So this creates this social stigma. Again, it's not the fault of anybody, but it's just the way that it works. So a safer learning environment, again, does not mean nobody's ever going to say something that somebody else disagrees with. That's not what I mean when I say a safer learning environment. I mean an environment that is safe for your kid to admit that they don't know, to ask for help, and to receive that help, and work through problems and fix them. Again, what environment is more safe than your home, and what environment do you have more control over than your home? I am not a fan of the concept of safe spaces or putting someone in a position where nothing could challenge them or anything bad could ever happen to them. But if this is your thing, then homeschooling is the best possible way to make sure that you don't have the bad things happen. If you're worried about the actual physical and or emotional safety of your child, homeschooling is the best way to protect it. You're worried about their intellectual or mental safety, homeschooling is the best way to go about it. Or you just want to prioritize that safety. Not even that you're worried about it, but you want to prioritize it. All that said, let's recap today's class, which is part 3 of our ongoing mini series here, the case for homeschooling. Number 7, a more flexible schedule. What you really want to live a rich life is to have control over your time, not necessarily money. Because if you're making a whole bunch of money, but you have no control over your time, then you really don't have freedom. You're a slave to the paycheck. Whatever's making you that money that causes you to go to work all the time, you're a slave to it because it owns you. You can't stop doing it because then you would lose the money and then you would see no value in anything else. The key to being in a position of control in life is to have a flexibility and power when it comes to how your time gets used, not so much about how much money you're making. Number 8, customize and one-on-one attention. All right, kids need this often when they are challenged on a subject. They need some customized and one-on-one attention, not just a teacher standing up at the front of the room bloviating about the point, knowing that you're already going over the head of about 80 of your kids, but you can't slow down and help each one of them because you ain't got enough time. This is the structure flaw in the system as it currently exists. And number 9 is safer learning environment. All right, you know who the other kids are that your kid or kids are around. You know who they're being taught by. You know exactly what they're being taught. They feel comfortable admitting they don't know something, that they need some extra help with something. They don't have the group setting stigma that they might get in public school where there are 30 kids in the classroom and you're the one who doesn't know something, as opposed to being in a pod with 3 other kids and you're the one who doesn't know something. It may be maybe more safer for your kid to admit it in a small group than they would need to in a larger group. All right, these are just some examples of the benefits of homeschooling. I'm not done. Tomorrow we get into part 4 of this 4-part mini series, the benefits of homeschooling. Between now and then, make sure you go to workonmygame.com, get on my email list, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com, become a member of my coaching program. The links to each down below in the description. Work on your game. Dre, all